This is my FZ6R 2012 Raven Edition, and you've seen my CBR. First brand new truck I ever bought, a Nissan, and then that was the one I had before that, little Isuzu. This was the second Radian I owned. This is the one I wound up painting red and black. I kicked a guy's ass on a 900 RR Honda on that bike, doing about 120. And I'll bet he wanted to burn his when he pulled up next to me and it was painted that color, because that was shameful. That was when I first painted it red, and after a while it was like that. I guess maybe the red and black one was actually a different bike. That was my third Radian. This was my 85 Eliminator. This was my first brand new wheeler, I believe. This was a 98 300 4-tracks. This is my shop back in the day, around the early 2000s. Radian, the Eliminator, and my two wheelers. There's a pretty good picture of me and my Eliminator. And this is me in that the third Radian. My first Radian was when I was 15. I didn't exactly ride it legally. This was a memorable day. Our first pond being dug, and the guy wound up driving right into the hole he had just spent all day digging on. And then, look at that, he's trying to get himself out. Wound up taking a second excavator to come and pull him out. The inside of the cab had about 4 feet of water and mud in it at one point. It looked like two monsters doing battle. This is my Venture. It was kind of a crappy bike, but it was kind of cool. Had kind of like the VMAX V4 motor in it. 1200. My cooker, after I got the pond straightened out, I actually used that 300 4-tracks with the plow to smooth out the banks and stuff. That was really an awesome machine. It's amazing what those little four-wheelers are capable of. There I am smoothing it out. And there's more of the finished product. There's a Maxima. I used to be a big Nissan fan. This truck here was the last one that we bought. That was a 98 also. And that's when they started kind of, I thought, switching more over to the Ford thing. And I had the front caliper fly off a truck that was a 80 or a 79 Ford, and I almost died in a Thunderbird. Those are the only two Fords I've ever owned, and I believe those will be the last two I ever own. Some Fords just ain't right for some people. These are fish. These two particular ones were steelhead salmon. You can catch these right up the road in Craftsbury at a private pond. I also caught a 22-pound brown trout, and I caught that on half of a 10-inch regular brook trout. Just stuck it through the dorsal fin and threw it out there. And it's an amazing place to fish. I've got some pictures. Oh yeah.
Can I see?
This is the main pond. He has two other growing ponds, and then this one here's got an aerator. They just get massive, giant There was my 99 Ninja ZX6R. And there's a nice picture of my scrambler with a Bigfoot kit.
Yeah.
Here's my wife helping me do a masonry job. She's been on roofs with me in very sweltering heat. This is a different job that I did. This is an '07 KFX 700. That was a really fun four-wheeler. Off the line, that would compete with a really built 450 Yamaha. I much prefer doing these residential jobs for myself rather than working for big outfits, contractors and whatnot. This is the bike I actually got my license on. I had to turn off the petcock valve because it would flood the carbs. Must be I had a float sticking or something. So while trying to do the course, I also had to simultaneously be shutting off the valve so it wouldn't overflow, and I was afraid I'd get disqualified, but the instructor was actually really cool, and he was saying, you know, why were you doing that? And I told him, and he's like, oh, I don't care, it was actually better because you had to do something else. That was a 76 554. This was an 83 Honda 750 Interceptor, or V45. I also had a 500 Interceptor, actually a couple different ones. This actually was the last Radian I had. I had this at the same time as that '07 Cowie. That was all original, beautiful stock condition. Had like 2,000 plus miles on it. So that was '07, so that was 20 years old, and it had that low of miles on it. Great bike. '86 Camaro, '86 Suzuki 250R four-wheeler. And this was a '80 Camaro I used to have. I actually had this one painted. That was back in '93. My old Valiant, that was a great car, straight six. This was an '87 700 Magna. And this was my really cool Blazer. It had a 6-inch suspension, 4-inch body with 44-inch Gumbo Monster mutters. That thing would climb anything. That was an '80 CB 750, and my wife actually negotiated the guy because I made him an offer and he turned me down. My wife called him back like the same day, and he accepted her offer, and it was like the same money. An old slob I had, a few sleds. This was the car we actually had when we got married. That was an '81 Champ with super low miles, like 30,000. This was in '95, and the car was an '81. So, had it not been for poor manufacturing, they had like rust in the metal when they built those cars, so they rusted out really easily. This was a gas tank that I painted because it had rusted out at the bottom, and that was a GPC 750. 350X in that same Camaro. Seika 550. That was an '82. This was like a crazy old James Bond back in the 50s jet ski. That's the camper we lived in when we first bought this land and moved up. It was quite cold, and when you woke up, your eyelids were pretty much frozen shut. So throughout the years, since I was 9 years old, I have owned now 39 motorcycles and at least more than a dozen ATCs and ATVs, few scattered snow mahoggers here and there. But motorcycles has always been the thing that really does it for me. I actually have a physical reaction when I come over to the shop, to the point where most of the time, I'd say 50% of the time anyhow, it actually makes me have to go to the bathroom. You know, when I watch my vlogs and I just see myself putting my gloves on, I actually have a reaction to that. I think that's the kind of passion you want out of whatever hobby it is you do. In my opinion, anyways. You know, if you're doing something just to pass the time or for whatever reason, I think it's time to keep searching. Philosophy I kind of came up with is if you go through life asking yourself why, then life has truly passed you by. And that's kind of how you want to monitor your life, you know. Kind of like when you question your job or question anything, really. I think that's time to start looking at maybe it's time to move on and do something different. This also was another Camaro I had. This says it was in '94 that I had that one. That was an 84, I think it was, or an 83 GPZ 550. An old Grand Prix I had with T-tops. That was all my glass from my Camaro and my Grand Prix.
Here's that book you were looking at.
Oh no, I guess it was recording then. This was the Ford that the front caliper flew off right through the air as I was driving. Way back then. Over 20 years we've been married. And I must thank her for doing all of my editing, because the way computers work, I could never have the patience to deal with them. Thank you, honey. This is when I started turning to GMs for 100% of the time. This was a 400 Scrambler 4x4 I used to have. There's me and my kitty cat Clydie. He got scooped up by an eagle, I do believe.
That picture.
A better picture of that last Radian I had. This was a '98 Trail Boss. That, I think I got my 4-tracks just before I got that one. This was a better picture of my XS 1100. It had straight pipes and it would blat. This was '03. Me and my boy. This is my first baby boy Riley on an XS 1100. That was an '81, I believe. This is a '83 250R I used to have. This was the air-cooled model, not liquid. If anyone wants any of these Motorcycle Superstore or Revzilla stickers, I'd be willing to send you some. As you can see, I've got a great many Motorcycle Superstores. Those are all brand new. you can put each of those on things and actually win. There's another Zilla one that's pretty cool. You can put them on anything, your house door or cabinet or anything. And if you send it in to the companies, they will, you know, put you in a drawing or whatever. I also have a couple little random O'Neills that I've gotten with products. If anybody wants those, feel free. Shoot me a line and your address or whatever it is you want me to send it to. I promise I'm not a whatever you're afraid of out there. That little saying about life passing you by, that also goes with that attempt at a joke. Because, you know, I hear a lot of people talk about the motovlog community and great stuff like that. And I realize a lot more people than motor vloggers watch our stuff. But don't forget that we do have freedoms in this country. And being terrified of every juncture of, you know, your own personal information is not really a great way to live. If somebody wants to steal your stuff, I guarantee you're not going to have a choice in the matter. So, you know, hiding your face or blacking out your license plate or whatever things, I mean, you certainly don't want to invite trouble, but you can go overboard with stuff like that as well. So, you know, remember that we do have freedoms, and don't be afraid of every possibility out there. There's no way to do it. There are times you need to and should persevere and move on with your life as well. I also want to say that we're really lucky to have motorcycles that perform and are as dependable as the bikes do today. Because, you know, if our bikes perform like computers, I don't think anybody would ride. You know, we're really fortunate to have a, you know, in some cases, $3,000 to $5,000 bike that outperform most, you know, $500,000 cars. You know, you might not have the exotic factor or whatever else, but that feeling that it gives you is a lot more real. And, you know, there's not too many things on earth that can compete